5:47 in the morning, and the fog sat low over Ridgemont, Tennessee, the kind that swallowed streetlights whole and left halos of damp orange hovering 6 feet off the ground. The air tasted like creek water and cut grass, that sweet mineral smell that only exists in small southern towns before the heat cooks everything flat. A man in grey compression shorts and a faded University of Memphis sweatshirt rounded the corner of Birchwood Lane, his breath coming in steady, visible puffs, his running shoes slapping a rhythm against the sidewalk that had been cracked by the same oak roots for 20 years. His name was Marcus Boland, 53 years old, 6'1", 210 pounds, the kind of build that suggested a former athlete who never completely stopped moving. He wore no watch, no earbuds, nothing but a single key on a lanyard tucked inside his waistband. This was his ritual. Every morning, 6 days a week for the past 4 years, this same 3-mile loop through the residential streets of Ridgemont, before the town woke up, before the phone calls started, before the day swallowed him. He passed the Hendersons' house with its collection of ceramic garden gnomes, and the Petersons' place where the motion sensor light clicked on and tracked him like it always did. He raised 2 fingers to the security camera mounted above the Petersons' garage. Mrs. Peterson had told him once that she could set her clock by his shadow crossing the lens. Marcus did not know that in approximately 9 minutes, a Ridgemont police cruiser would round the same corner behind him. He did not know that by 6:15, his face would be pressed against the hood of that cruiser, the metal cold enough to make his cheek go numb. And he certainly did not know that by noon, this quiet town of 11,000 people would be the lead story on every cable news network in the country. But we will get to all of that. The cruiser was parked in the lot of Greenleaf Baptist Church, engine running, headlights off. Officer Kyle Beckford sat behind the wheel with a gas station coffee balanced on his knee, scrolling through his phone with his thumb. 38 years old, 12 years on the force. He had a round face going soft at the jaw and a crew cut he maintained every 2 weeks at the same barber who had cut his father's hair. There were 4 civilian complaints in his personnel file, all from traffic stops, all from black drivers, all marked resolved without investigation. His sergeant had once described him in a performance review as enthusiastic but occasionally lacking in de-escalation awareness, which was the kind of language that meant nothing and protected everyone. Beckford looked up from his phone and saw a figure moving through the fog on Birchwood Lane. A large black man in dark clothing, jogging. No reflective gear. No visible identification. Moving with purpose through a neighborhood that Beckford knew, from 12 years of patrol, to be almost entirely white. He put the coffee into the cup holder. He pulled the cruiser out of the lot. The lights came on first. Blue and red cutting through the fog like something from a carnival, painting the tree trunks and mailboxes in alternating color. Marcus heard the whoop of the siren, a single short burst, and slowed to a walk. Then stopped. He turned around with his hands visible at his sides, fingers spread, the way his father had taught him when he was 14 years old. That lesson had been delivered in the parking lot of a Kroger in 1985, and Marcus had never forgotten the flatness in his father's voice when he said it, like he was teaching him how to survive a bear encounter, not an interaction with public servants. The cruiser stopped 15 feet behind him. The door opened. Beckford stepped out, leaving the driver's side door wide, one hand on his belt. "Morning, officer." Marcus said it first, calm, easy, like he was greeting a neighbor. Beckford did not respond to the greeting. He walked forward with his flashlight raised, the beam hitting Marcus directly in the eyes. "You live around here?" I do. Where exactly? Marcus blinked against the light. On Sycamore. About half a mile that way. Beckford swept the flashlight down Marcus's body, then back up. What are you doing out here at this hour? Running. I run every morning in this neighborhood. It was not phrased as a question. Marcus recognized the tone. He had heard it before, in other towns, in other decades, from other men who looked at his skin and saw a problem to solve. Yes, sir. Same route for about 4 years now. Beckford tilted his head. You got any ID on you? Marcus looked down at his compression shorts and sweatshirt. I am out for a jog, officer. I do not carry my wallet when I run. Something shifted in Beckford's posture. His shoulders squared, his chin lifted. It was the posture of a man who had just been given the answer he wanted, the absence of identification, the gap he could drive a truck through. So you cannot prove you live here. I can give you my address. You can walk with me to my front door if you would like. Beckford stepped closer. How about you put your hands on the hood of my vehicle while I figure out what is going on here? Marcus did not move. Officer, I have not committed any crime. I am a resident of this town, jogging on a public sidewalk. Can I ask why you stopped me? The flashlight beam did not waver. Beckford's voice dropped to something quieter, which was worse than shouting. Because I have had reports of break-ins in this area, and you match the description. Marcus felt the familiar weight settle into his chest. It was not fear, exactly. It was something older and heavier, the exhaustion of having the same conversation with different faces in different parking lots and on different sidewalks for 40 years. What description would that be, officer? Beckford did not answer the question. He answered a different one, the one that had been running underneath the entire conversation. I am not going to ask you again. Hands on the hood. Now. Marcus walked slowly to the cruiser and placed both palms flat on the hood. The metal was cold from the fog and vibrated faintly from the idling engine. He could feel the heat from the exhaust curling around his ankles. Beckford came up behind him and kicked his feet apart. You are making this harder than it needs to be, Beckford said. Then he began patting Marcus down, roughly, the kind of search that was less about finding something and more about establishing dominance. His hands pressed hard against Marcus's ribs, his waistband, the small of his back. There is nothing on me. You can see that. Beckford found the key on the lanyard, pulled it out, held it up to the flashlight like it was evidence. What is this to? My house? Beckford snorted. Could be to anything. Could be to a storage unit full of stolen property, for all I know. Officer, that is a front door key. You can see the Schlager logo on it. Beckford dropped the key on the ground. It hit the asphalt with a small metallic sound that Marcus would remember for months afterward, a sound that meant something more than what it was. You know what I think? Beckford said, pulling his handcuffs from his belt. I think you are casing these houses. I think you picked this time of day because you thought nobody would be watching. That is not what is happening here. Turn around. Marcus turned slowly. He looked directly into Beckford's face and saw something there that surprised him. Not hatred exactly. Something more like fear wearing the mask of authority. A man who needed to be right because the alternative, being wrong, being the kind of person who stops a man for jogging while black, was something he could not afford to see in himself. In all. You people, Beckford said, and the words came out like he had been holding them behind his teeth for the entire interaction. Always got an excuse, always got a story. Running at 5 in the morning in a neighborhood like this. You think I am stupid? The handcuffs closed around Marcus's left wrist first. The metal was cold, and it pinched the skin over the bone. Then the right wrist. The click was mechanical and final. You are making a serious mistake, officer. Beckford leaned in close enough that Marcus could smell the gas station coffee on his breath, that burnt chemical smell mixed with powdered creamer. Save it for the station. He guided Marcus toward the back of the cruiser, one hand on the chain between the cuffs, one hand on his shoulder. Marcus went without resistance. He had been arrested before, once in 1994, a traffic stop in Mississippi that turned into 60 hours of his life he would never get back. He knew the script. He knew that resistance, even verbal resistance, could become the justification for everything that followed. But as Beckford opened the rear door of the cruiser, Marcus said one thing, quietly, almost to himself. "I would like to make a phone call." Beckford laughed. It was a short, dismissive sound. "Yeah, you can call your lawyer from booking." "It is not a lawyer I need to call." Beckford paused. Something in Marcus's tone, the absolute stillness of it, the way it carried zero panic and zero pleading, registered somewhere in the back of his mind. But he pushed it away. He had committed to this course of action, and changing it now would mean admitting he had been wrong from the start. "Get in the car." Marcus sat in the back of the cruiser. The seat was hard plastic, designed for easy cleaning. It smelled like vinyl and something antiseptic, and underneath that, something human and desperate from whoever had sat there last. The cage between front and back seats was scratched where someone had kicked it. Through the window, the fog was beginning to thin, and the first pale light of morning was turning the sky from black to the color of a bruise. Beckford got behind the wheel. He picked up his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I have one in custody. Black male, 6 foot, found on foot in the Birchwood area. No ID, no cooperation. Bringing him in for processing." The radio crackled. "Copy Unit 7. And then Beckford's phone rang. Not his department phone. His personal cell, sitting in the cup holder next to his coffee. He glanced at the screen. The caller ID said, "Sergeant Reeves." He answered. "Beckford, where are you right now?" Sergeant Reeves's voice sounded strange. Tight, like he was trying to swallow something. "Birchwood Lane. Just picked up a suspicious individual on foot, bringing him in." There was a pause. A long one. The kind of pause that contains an entire career beginning to collapse. "Beckford, listen to me very carefully. Describe the individual you have in custody. Black male, 50s, grey sweatshirt, running shorts. No ID." Another pause. Beckford could hear other voices in the background on Reeves's end. Multiple voices. Someone was speaking very fast. "Beckford, do not move. Do not transport. Stay exactly where you are. Do you understand me? Sarge, what is going on? I have got a routine pickup here. That man you have in handcuffs." Reeves's voice cracked on the word. "That is Marcus Boland. That is the mayor." The cruiser was silent, except for the engine idling. Beckford stared at the rearview mirror. Marcus Boland sat in the back seat with his wrists cuffed behind him, looking out the window at the fog, with an expression of absolute, terrifying patience. The mayor. Beckford said the word like it was in a language he did not speak. "The mayor of this city, Beckford. The man who signs off on our budget. The man who appointed Chief Walters. You handcuffed the mayor of Ridgemont." Through the rearview mirror, Marcus Boland met Beckford's eyes. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He simply looked at him the way you look at a weather pattern you have seen forming 100 times before. "And he is on the City Council group chat right now," Reeves continued. "He sent a text 90 seconds ago. His wife called Council President Amara Washington. Washington called Chief Walters. Chief Walters just called me. I am on my way to you now with half the council behind me. There are 3 cars pulling out of City Hall right now. And Beckford, somebody called Channel 5. Beckford's hand was shaking. The phone vibrated against his ear from the tremor in his fingers. I did not. He did not tell me who he was. Did you ask his name? Beckford opened his mouth, closed it. The answer sat in the silence like a stone at the bottom of a well. He had not asked Marcus Boland his name. Not once. He had asked where he lived, what he was doing, demanded identification. But in 12 minutes of interaction, he had never once asked the most basic question a human being can ask another human being. He heard Marcus's voice from the back seat, quiet and clear through the cage. You never asked. They arrived in waves. First was Sergeant Reeves in his personal vehicle, a blue Honda Accord. Because he had not even taken time to get a cruiser. He pulled up and got out and stood on the sidewalk with both hands on his head for 3 full seconds before approaching the vehicle. Then came 2 city council members in a single car. Council President Amara Washington, driving. Councilman James Derritt in the passenger seat, filming on his phone. The camera was already live streaming. Then came Chief Walters in his department SUV, driving too fast for the residential street, the tires chirping when he braked. He was in uniform, but his shirt was untucked, and he had clearly dressed in 90 seconds. And then, turning slowly onto Birchwood Lane, like a funeral procession, came a Channel 5 news van, with its satellite mast already extending upward through the thinning fog. Beckford had not moved from the driver's seat. His hands were at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, and his face had taken on the color of the fog outside. A grayish white that made his freckles stand out like spots on an egg. Chief Walters reached the cruiser first. He did not look at Beckford. He walked directly to the rear passenger door, opened it, and leaned in. Mr. Mayor, I am sorry. Let me get those off you right now. Marcus extended his wrists. The chief removed the handcuffs himself, carefully, and Marcus rubbed the red marks they had left on his skin. Twin lines, one on each wrist, that would bruise by afternoon and become the most photographed bruises in Tennessee that week. Marcus stepped out of the cruiser. He stood on the sidewalk where he had been running 30 minutes earlier, straightened his sweatshirt, and bent down to pick up his house key from where it still lay on the asphalt. Council President Washington approached with the phone still recording. Marcus, are you all right? I am fine, Amara. Physically, I am fine. Chief Walters turned to Beckford's window. Officer Beckford, step out of the vehicle. Beckford opened the door slowly, the way a man climbs out of a car he has just crashed. His legs did not seem to be working correctly. Chief, I did not know. There was no way for me to know. Walters looked at him with an expression that Beckford had never seen from his chief before. It was not anger. It was calculation. The chief was already doing the math, the lawsuits, the federal review, the department's accreditation, his own career. All of it falling through the air like cards from a deck thrown off a roof. Badge and weapon, Beckford. Right now. Chief, if you would just let me explain. There is nothing to explain. You detained a citizen without probable cause. You failed to ask his name. You used a racial description as your primary identifier in your dispatch call. And you did all of this to the mayor of the city that employs you, while his neighbor's security cameras were recording every second. Beckford's hand went to his badge. He unclipped it slowly. Then his service weapon. He placed both on the hood of his cruiser, the same hood where he had pressed Marcus's palms flat 25 minutes earlier. The badge made a small sound against the metal. His name was engraved on the back of it, and for one moment, just before he let go, his thumb ran across the engraving the way a person touches something they are losing. That was the moment. The one flash of something that was not cruelty or stupidity. It was a man touching his own name and understanding that the version of himself attached to that name was ending. He had become a police officer because his father had been one, and his father's father before that. 3 generations of Beckfords in uniform in small Tennessee towns. And whatever those men had been, whatever mix of service and prejudice and small-town authority had run through that family line, Kyle Beckford was going to be the one who broke it. Not through reform, through failure. Chief Walters turned to Reeves. "Get him out of here. Suspended without pay, effective immediately. Internal Affairs will be at his door by noon." Beckford walked to Reeves's Honda Accord without looking back at the cruiser. The Channel 5 camera tracked him the entire way. Marcus Boland stood on the sidewalk and watched him go. Then he turned to Council President Washington and the camera she was still holding. "Amara, I want a special session of the council. Today. 3 o'clock. She nodded. "And I want every body camera record from the Ridgemont Police Department for the last 24 months, pulled and reviewed by an independent auditor." The chief started to speak. Marcus held up one hand. "Alan, I appointed you. I respect you. But this did not happen in a vacuum. 4 complaints in his file. 4. And he was still on patrol at 5 in the morning with a badge and a gun and the authority to put handcuffs on a citizen who was doing nothing but running. That is not one bad officer. That is a system that looked at a pattern and decided the pattern was acceptable." Chief Walters said nothing. He looked at the ground. Marcus turned to the camera. He spoke directly into it, and his voice carried the particular weight of a man who had been rehearsing this speech his entire life without knowing it. "I was not the first person Officer Beckford stopped for no reason. I was just the first one with a city council on speed dial, and that is the problem. The special session convened at 3:14 that afternoon in the Ridgemont City Council chambers. A room that smelled like lemon furniture polish and old carpet, and that normally held an audience of 6 or 7 retired residents who came for the entertainment value. That day, every seat was full. There were cameras from 4 networks. The overflow crowd stood in the hallway and listened through the open doors. The council voted unanimously on 3 measures. First, mandatory body cameras for all Ridgemont officers, effective within 60 days, funded by reallocation from the department's vehicle budget. Second, an independent review of all civilian complaints filed against RPD officers in the past 5 years, to be conducted by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Third, the creation of a civilian oversight board with subpoena power. The TBI review, when completed 11 weeks later, revealed that the Ridgemont Police Department had received 87 civilian complaints in 5 years. 61 of them involved black residents. 14 officers were found to have patterns of racially disproportionate stops and detentions. 3, including Beckford, were referred for criminal investigation. The city of Ridgemont settled a civil rights lawsuit filed by Marcus Boland for $2.8 million. Marcus directed every cent into a community trust fund for legal defense services for residents who could not afford attorneys during police encounters. Officer Kyle Beckford was formally terminated 31 days after the incident. He was charged with deprivation of rights under color of law, a federal civil rights violation. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial and received 14 months in federal custody and 3 years of supervised release. He was barred from serving in law enforcement in any capacity in the state of Tennessee. His father, retired Sergeant Donald Beckford, attended every day of the sentencing hearing. He sat in the 3rd row and did not speak to reporters. On the last day, he was photographed leaving the courthouse alone, walking to his truck in a parking lot emptied by a cold November rain, his collar turned up against the weather. 6 months after the incident, a reporter from the Memphis Commercial Appeal asked Marcus Boland what he thought about when he ran past the spot on Birchwood Lane where it had happened. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I think about the key," he said. "He dropped my house key on the ground, and I remember the sound it made. This small metal sound on the asphalt. And I think about how many people have had their keys dropped, their dignity dropped. That same small sound over and over in 1,000 towns. And nobody was recording." The following Tuesday morning, at 5:47, Marcus Boland rounded the corner of Birchwood Lane in his grey compression shorts and his faded University of Memphis sweatshirt. The Petersons' motion sensor light clicked on and tracked him like it always did. He raised 2 fingers to the camera above the garage. The fog was thick again. The air tasted like creek water and cut grass. His shoes made the same rhythm on the same cracked sidewalk. The oaks pushing up the same roots they had been pushing for 20 years. He ran the same route, the same pace, the same time. As if nothing had happened at all, which was precisely the point.